Hare Krishna. Before continuing, I will read a summary of the first part of this chapter from Purna Prajnaprabhu. So we can start recording again.
Recording in progress.
After picking up his terrible trident, Hiranyakasipu displaced his sharp teeth, fierce glance, and frowning eyebrows, and spoke to his demon associates. O Danavas and Daityas, kindly hear me with attention, and then act accordingly without delay. My insignificant enemies, the demigods, have killed my brother with the help of Lord Vishnu, although the Supreme Lord has always been equal to both sides, this time being devoutly worshipped by the demigods. He has taken their side. Like a restless child who is easily won over, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gave up his natural equality under the influence of Maya. He assumed the form of a boar to please his devotees. I will therefore sever Lord Vishnu's head with my trident, and then bless my dead brother with profuse offerings of blood. In this way I shall fulfill my obligations and at the same time achieve peace of mind. When the roots of a tree are cut off, it falls and dries up. Similarly, when I kill diplomatic Vishnu, who is their life and soul, the demigods will wither away. My dear demons, while I am engaged in killing Lord Vishnu, you should go down to earth, which is flourishing due to Brahminical culture and a Kshatriya government. Destroy all those people who are engaged in austerity, sacrifice, Vedic study, the performance of vows, and the giving of charity. The basic principle of Brahminical culture is to satisfy Lord Vishnu, who is the personified reservoir of all religious principles and the shelter of the demigods. When the Brahmins are killed, there will be no one to encourage the Kshatriyas to perform yagyas, and thus the demigods will automatically perish, immediately go to wherever the Brahmins and cows are being protected and set fire to those places. Since the demons were very envious and fond of performing destructive activities, they respectfully took Hiranyakasipu's order upon their heads and offered him their obeisances. Thereafter, according to his directions, the demons set fire to cities, villages, pasturing grounds, cowsheds, gardens, agricultural fields and forests. They also burned down the ashrams of saintly persons, the villages of the cowherd men, and the government capitals. Some of the demons broke bridges, city walls, and gates, while others cut down all kinds of valuable fruit trees and set fire to the residence of the citizens. As a result of all these disturbances, the people gradually gave up the activities of Vedic culture, and thus the demigods also became disturbed for want of sacrificial offerings. Leaving their heavenly abodes, the demigods began wandering over the earth unobserved by the demons in order to view the disasters first hand. So, Hiranyakasipu was expert in the Vedas to study the enemy, Lord Vishnu, and then use that knowledge to make a plan. He understood Brahminical culture has to be rooted out, then I can hurt Vishnu. That was his plan. Now we enter now another section of this chapter where Hiranyakasipu will be preaching to his mother, Diti, his mother-in-law and his nephews. But why he will preach Vedic philosophy, knowledge, transcendental knowledge about the soul. But he has his purpose, that he wants to console them so that they feel good again, that he has his purpose. So we will hear now his preaching, that I will first read verses and skip the purports, just go to his preaching up to the stories. Before the stories we will stop, just reading his preaching, and then we will discuss and go back and look at some of the purports. Text 17. After performing the ritualistic observances for the death of his brother, Hiranyakashipu, being extremely unhappy, tried to pacify his nephews. O King, Hiranyakashipu was extremely angry, but since he was a great politician, he knew how to act according to time and situation. With sweet words he began pacifying his nephews, whose names were Sakuni, Sambar, Drishti, Bhuta Santapan, Vrika, Kalanap, Mahanap, Arishmashu, and Utkacha. He also consoled their mother, his sister-in-law, Rusabanu, as well as his own mother Diti. He spoke to them as follows. Hiranyakashipu said, My dear mother, sister-in-law, and nephews, you should not lament for the death of the great hero, for a hero's death in front of his enemy is glorious and desirable. My dear mother, in a restaurant or place for drinking cold water, many travelers are brought together, and after drinking water they continue to their respective destinations. Similarly, living entities join together in a family and later, as a result of their own actions, are led apart to their destinations. The spirit soul, the living entity, has no death, nor is he eternal and inexhaustible. Being free from material contamination, he can go anywhere in the material or spiritual worlds. He is fully aware and completely different from the material body. But because of being misled by misuse of his slight independence, he is obliged to accept subtle and gross bodies created by the material energy, and thus be subjected to so-called material happiness and distress. Therefore, no one should lament for the passing of the spirit soul from the body. Because of the movements of the water, trees on the bank of a river, when reflected on the water, seem to move. Similarly, when the eyes move because of some mental derangement, the land appears to move also. In the same way, O gentle mother, when the mind is agitated by the movements of the modes of material nature, the living entity, although free from the different phases of the subtle and gross bodies, thinks that he has changed from one condition to another. In his bewildered state, the living entity, accepting the body and mind to be the self, considers some people to be his kinsmen and others to be outsiders. Because of this misconception, he suffers. Indeed, the accumulation of such concocted material ideas is the cause of suffering and so-called happiness in the material world. The conditioned soul, thus situated, must take birth in different species and work in various types of consciousness, thus creating new bodies. Thus, continued material life is called samsara, birth, death, lamentation, foolishness, and anxiety are due to such material considerations. Thus, we sometimes come to a proper understanding and sometimes fall again to a wrong conception of life. In this regard, an example is given from an old history. This involves a discourse between Yamaraj and a friend of a dead person. So we will stop here and go to the here. So what is wrong with Hiranyakashipu's preaching here? That can someone point out what's wrong? That yes, so Sundari Gopi Mataji, please.
Maharaj, here his intention was very clear for his own enjoyment. He was not thinking from Krishna's perspective, what would please Krishna. He was only clear what is for my benefit. So he was just using the Vedas. That's why that was a problem in his preaching, that there was the knowledge was right, but it was just for his own self-interest. So that was the basic foundational problem.
And what was his self-interest?
Sorry, Maharaj?
What was his self-interest?
That he wanted to enjoy. He did not want to surrender. There was no ways that Vishnu is great, or that he wanted to destroy Vishnu. So his self-interest was only very clear that I, me, and myself. The aham mameti was the biggest thing in him.
Yeah, that's in relation to his plan to destroy Vishnu, right?
Right.
But the question was more here about his preaching to his nephews. That how do we see that? I think that anyway, we will hear from others. But I think you are right, and we will come to we will come to the point of pointing out what is his self-interest in this preaching. He just wants to console his relatives. That is his purpose. He wants to console his relatives. Okay, Mother Bhakti Priya, please. Thank you.
To my understanding, Hiranyakashipu, first he was vengeful. He wanted to take revenge on the Lord because he killed his brother. That's number one, first point.
Yeah.
The second point is, yes, he's trying to console his relatives, the mother and all of the relatives, cousins, etc. He's using the philosophy. The philosophy is right, but unfortunately, he's using for the wrong purposes. So here, he's trying to console them, but then he's using it to cause agitation around among the demons, so that they will take the revenge to the Lord. So they will destroy the Brahmanical culture. They will try to set everything on fire. So the analogy was, if you cut down the root of the tree, the tree will fall, right? They think they can kill Lord Vishnu, but they cannot kill. So their understanding is wrong, because they think he is ordinary. So in his preaching, these are the mistakes I see. their misconception, their understanding about the Lord as not ordinary person, and they think Lord is like a child because he takes prasadam, he takes bhoga from the devotees out of love.
Yeah.
But they think as a child, if you give a chocolate or something to the child will do anything, right? So they think they are comparing the Lord to a child. So which is another wrong idea.
But he presents this Vedic knowledge about the soul to his nephews. If we narrow it to that, what is wrong with his preaching there? That Atichandra Govindapur.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Pranam Maharaj. Maharaj, what I could see is that there are two main issues I could identify here. One is that, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that the original purpose of the Veda is to understand him. But now Hiranyakashipu is using against him. That is one thing. So instead of trying to understand the Lord, self-realization and understanding the Lord, he is using to use it as against him. Second thing is, what I could see is that though he is preaching it to his the relatives, the mother-in-law, or nephews, whoever, but has he practicing himself? He is a self-realized person should never go against his senses and out of beyond the control. I mean, he doesn't have self-control.
Yeah, right.
But he is talking only to a self-controlled person.
Because he's trying to console his relatives, but if he would practice what he preaches, he would not become angry. And he's very angry toward Lord Vishnu. So he has no integrity. He's not practicing what he's preaching. And he has no intention to do that, whatever. So his motivation is completely wrong. He's not preaching to help his relatives to make spiritual advancement. That's not in his mind. So these are a few philosophical points of the preaching now, which are on the screen. Of the preaching of Hiranyakashipu to his relatives. A hero's death in front of an enemy is glorious. Living entities join together in a family, but as a result of their own action, they are led apart to their destinations. Srila Prabhupada has quite a purport about this. He makes a point here that why are we in this world? We have come here only because we wanted to be equal to Krishna in enjoyment. And therefore we are in this material nature to some degree or other. So we are all prisoners. So we have temporarily we have family members, but soon we will continue to our respective destinations. Just like a straw in the river, straws may come together for some time and then they go. Such in a train you can meet people and talk until you get your destination and meet them and don't meet them ever again. So Hiranyakashipu was a demon, but he had Vedic knowledge and understanding. So the advice was quite sound that he gave, and that it's highly elevated knowledge. But they are not using this knowledge for the service of the Lord. And therefore they are called demons. They are using it for other purposes, selfish purposes. But the demigods, they are different. They want to satisfy the Lord. Yes. And also this Varnashram system is meant to satisfy the Lord. So just that's the difference. If we want to become a demigod or we want to become godly, we must satisfy the Supreme Lord. So family members are like straws mixed together in a whirlpool, and later disposed again by the waves. They float alone in the water. So in families you can have conflict, difficulties, so many things. But it's all temporary. Soon we are like someone who is in a room and is at the door going outside the room. And he goes outside the room to never come in the room again. Once outside the room, are you concerned what's going to happen in the room? No. So the situation, all these relationships we have, it's temporary. It's gone soon. We are out and we go to the next destination. So we should take these relationships not too serious. That it's temporary. But we should act out of duty. That duty we have to take serious. So the spiritual soul has no depth, for is eternal and inexhaustible, is preaching Bhagavad Gita. That this is pure Bhagavad Gita. So it describes the position of the soul. The soul is never the body, but it's always completely different from the body. That the soul is no death. So yes. But why are we here? Karanam kunasangrasya sat asajoni janmasu. Yeah. Bhakti pragati jan gunan. We try to enjoy. And therefore, we have been put in different species of life, infected by these desires. But when we are conditioned by material nature, we must accept a certain type of body, which is offered under the direction of the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada quotes 1861. Ishvara Sarvabhutnam Ritsayunatiste Brahmyam Sarvabhutani Yantra Udaya Maya. That the Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart and is directing the wanderings of all living entities while seated as on a yantra, a machine made of material energy. The body is just like a machine, Prabhupada says. And according to living's end and its karma, is offered a particular type of machine to move here and there under the control of material nature. This continues until he surrenders to the Supreme Lord. That is our choice. That until we surrender, we have to go to that. This is okay. Further philosophical points from the preaching of Hiranyakashipu. So, being free from material contamination, he can go anywhere in the material and spiritual worlds. So the soul is different from the material body, he says. Then 1322 he mentions. He's preaching Bhagavad Gita, being misled by the slight independence living entities infected by the modes of nature, and is boring. It is taking birth in different families and species of life Karanam gunasangasya satasatyo nijanmasu. By the agitation of the mind, the material modes, the living entity thinks that he has changed from one condition to another. That, yes, we think we are changed. And many years ago, we had a youthful body, and now we have an old body. We think we have changed from one condition to another. That then in the purport of 24, Avikalapumam, Atma, the spirit is always unchanged. Then Manodharma. Manodharma means the spirit soul carried away by mental activities suffers from so-called conditions of material life. Bewildered, the living entity, accepting the body and the mind to be the self, considered some people as kinsmen and others to be outsiders. And thus he suffers happiness and distress. Birth, death, lamentation, foolishness, and anxiety are due to material considerations. It's interesting that Hiranyakasipu is telling that to them. But he acts out of the bodily relationships with his brother. He's going to take revenge. It's all about bodily relationships. But here he's telling them that let it go, you are not a body, that these are not your kinsmen, and so on. So he's not practicing what he is preaching. That the conditioned soul comes from an unknown place and returns after death to that same unknown place, which is controlled by material nature. Knowing this, why do they usually lament? So he's using here an unknown place. He does not speak about the super soul. That is not. It doesn't seem to fit in his preaching and his purposes. So 39:40. I think we were not yet there. 39:40. These are the teachings of Yamaraj. Good. That these teachings we will discuss further tomorrow. Are there any questions so far? Yes, Atichandra Govinda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I don't know I'm right or because for me personally, I'm also like Hiranyakashipu. Know so many things, but hardly practicing in the life. And theoretically, we know that we are the soul, we are not the body, and we need to serve the Lord. All these things theoretically we know as Hiranyakashipu, but how can we apply it in our life? What is any practical points that you can help us? So that we can improve.
And that is the purpose of study the scriptures. What is in the scriptures for us, and how can I apply it in my life? It does not mean that we are struggling to apply it, that we are like Hiranyakasipu. No, Hiranyakasipu did not recognize the superiority of the Supreme Lord and was not aware of his position. But we are, and that's a good begin. But to applying that in our lives, yes, that if we really understand that philosophy, which is our Hiranyakasipu preaching here, we become detached, renounced. That, but Bhakti Pragati Jangunan, we have this tendency to still become, to enjoy that. So yes, that therefore all this knowledge is in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna explains that we should act in Krishna consciousness without attachment to the results, and that is the beginning. And for this we have Varnashram in this 7th canto, from I think from chapter 10 till the end. You will hear about the 4 ashrams and the 4 varnas, that the 4 orders of life, and what our duties are. So how to practice this depends on our situation. A householder will have another practice than a brahmachari or a sannyasi, and we have to act according to our position. And therefore, this is very important. This varnashram system. We may have theoretically the ashrams in ISKCON, the varnas not so much, although it's mostly mixed. But varna means acting according to one's psychophysical nature, which we have to recognize. And these principles that will be discussed there, I think they will be explained by Yadunanda Maharaj. That is very good for understanding our appropriate practice according to our situation. Of course, there are general principles, and the general principles are explained by Hiranyakasipu, but he said, Jachnarta karmano yatralokayam karma bandhanam, that work should be done as a sacrifice for Vishnu, and that's the last thing he wants to do. But that's the basic principle. And Prabhupada in the Purpose Spirit, he stresses so much that sacrifice means in Kali Yuga the chanting of the holy names, that we follow principles and chanting of the holy name. And then we have Prabhupada's mission. If we engage in Prabhupada's mission, automatically Jachnarta karmano yatralokayam karma bandhana. But besides, we have also our occupational duty according to our psychophysical nature, and that's important. And once a devotee, I was thinking it was at the Bhaktivedanta manner. A devotee went to Prabhupada and asked, Prabhupada, I want to please you. Ask me anything and I will do it. And Prabhupada replied, what do you want to do for Krishna? Because what you want to do is mostly according to your psychophysical nature. And the devotee replied, but Prabhupada, it doesn't matter. Ask me anything, I will do it. But Prabhupada became more stern and serious and said, try to understand our philosophy. What do you want to do for Krishna? And then the devotee said, I want to make unbreakable mridangas. And Prabhupada said, yes, you do that for Krishna. And he made these first fiberglass mridangas, which we are using all over the world now. So, yes, it's important, if we are still conditioned, to act according to our psychophysical nature. But these last chapters of this 7th canto will help with that understanding. How do I fit in? And there you have the duties of the householders, and yeah, that's important also, because I'm a member of the Ministry for Sannyas, and in preparing sannyasis for for taking sannyas, we prepare them to preach appropriately, and how they have to preach to householders and to brahmacharis is different. That they have to help everyone according to his situation to make progress in devotional service. I hope this helps.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. To end, I will just read Hiranyakashipu's preaching again. That so this is from the summary. Hiranyakashipu said, "My dear relatives, you should not lament for the death of a great hero, for death at the hands of an enemy is glorious. After all, living entities come together as a family, and then later on, as a result of their fruitive work, separate and go to their individual destinations. It is just like travelers that assemble at a hotel and after spending the night continue to their respective destinations. The spirit soul has no death, however, for he is eternal, inexhaustible, and completely distinct from the perishable material body. Therefore, no one should lament for the passing away of the spirit soul at the time of death. Due to the movement of the water, when trees on the riverside are seen as a reflection upon the surface, they appear to be moving. Similarly, when the eyes, due to some mental derangement or intoxication, the land appears to move. In the same way, due to the bodily identification caused by the mind's attachment to the three modes of material nature, the conditioned soul thinks is changing from one condition of life to another, although in reality is unchanging. In such a bewildered state, a living entity considers some people to be his family and others to be outsiders, and it is for this reason that he suffers. In fact, the accumulation of all such mental concoctions is the cause of repeated birth and death in the material world. In this regard, I will narrate to you an ancient history for your enlightenment. And that history, which are factually two stories, we will discuss tomorrow. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Happy Diwali, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.